If you have a Bible, turn to 1 Corinthians chapter number 4. 1 Corinthians chapter number 4. And we'll look down at verse 1. 1 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse 1. About 8 years ago, 1 Corinthians chapter 4, I was out on visitation. And I pulled in the yard here and parked under the shade tree over here. There was no parking lot over there, just shade trees. And I parked in the shade trees. And the cell phone went off, and it was Sue Flack. And she said she believed that Greg's son, Chris, had passed away. So we went up to Rabbit Moffett Road there. And Sue gave us the directions. And there was a girl running down the road. And she was covered in blood. She was in something like a little nightgown, like a little skimpy nightgown. It was covered with blood. And it was Greg's son Chris's blood. And the policeman was running down the road after her. And the policeman got her, carried her back up in the yard. And I went up in the yard with Greg and Sue. And I guess there were 3 or 4 cars there, and I guess there was bullet holes in all of them. And evidently, Chris had gotten upset, and maybe he shot all those bullet holes in those cars. Then went inside, evidently through an argument with a young lady, some kind of conflict there had occurred, and during that conflict he had died. It was a real bad time, real bad time. And Greg and Sue and Kay Webb, we went up to Kay Webb's house, and I'll never forget that time. That was just about July the 19th, 1999, and Chris was a nice young fella. He and his brother Greg got saved at the same time. Terry King led them to the Lord, and they got baptized here. And we went up to a church in North Carolina at the Piney Knob Baptist Church on July 1998. And we preached Chris's funeral. He was buried up on the hill there in the church cemetery. And that happened around this time of the year. About that time of the year, my own girl passed away on the 18th, and she was buried on the 21st, and I think Chris was buried somewhere on the 19th. 1 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse 1. Let a man so account of us as the ministers of Christ and stewards of the mysteries of God. When God saves you, you become a steward of the things of God. Paul's job was to show forth the mysteries of God. These things are a mystery until you understand them by faith. More is required in the steward that a man be found faithful. But with me it is a very small thing that I should be judged of you, or a man's judgment. I judge not mine own self. See, we like to judge. We love to judge other folks. And we like to judge. We're in the judging business. But the problem with our judging is we don't have all the facts. See, we don't know what goes on secretly in a person's life or what they're doing in private. We just know what we think we know, and so we judge, and most of the time our judgment is a million miles off. For I know not nothing by myself, yet I hear that I judge justified, but he that judges me is the Lord. Verse 5, therefore, since you know verse 1 through 4, he don't judge himself. He doesn't care about other people's judgment of him. Therefore, judge nothing before the time. You see, there's going to come a time when everybody in this building, if you're saved, you're going to stand before the great white throne judgment, and there'll be 5 books open. There'll be the book of the Word of God. Every sermon you ever heard, God will open it up, and it'll be put there before you. The book of deeds will be opened. Every time you threw down the gospel tract, cussed out the preacher, run off the people of God that's come to try to help you. There'll be the book of words. By thy words thou shalt be justified, or by thy words thou shalt be condemned. The book of words will be open. The book of deeds will be open. And the Lamb's book of life will be open, and you'll be judged out of those books. If you're a saved person here, you'll go before the judgment bar of God, and you'll be judged according to your deeds. Therefore, judge not before the time, because there's going to come a time when every lost person in here is going to stand before the great white throne judgment, and 5 books will be opened. And those that are saved, you'll stand before the judgment seat of God, what we call the bema seat, and you'll be judged. And you don't judge before the time because you don't know all the facts. God knows all the facts. So what your job is to live for God, because you don't know about everybody. Until the Lord come, who will both bring to light the hidden things of darkness. See, God knows all the things of darkness. God knows everything was done in the dark last night. He knows everything was done in the dark last year. He knows everything is done in the dark in February. You see, men love darkness rather than light because their deeds are evil. And God knows all you're doing in the dark. And you see, men love darkness rather than light because their deeds are evil. And so darkness. And men love to dwell in darkness. People go to a tavern. They go to a place that's not very well lit because their deeds are evil. And they know in their conscience that that's wrong. That's why people play rock and roll music and all this music and all this wrong music. They play it loud because it drowns out their conscience, because their conscience tells them that's the wrong thing to do. And the Bible says the conscience can be a guide, but it cannot be a good guide unless you're born again, and sometimes the conscience messes you up. And will make manifest, that means reveal the counsel of the heart, then every man shall praise God. One of these days, God is going to reveal everything that everybody here has ever done in your whole life. Think about it. But anyway, sometimes people say, well, does so-and-so go to heaven? I don't know. You don't know either, do you? Well, I know people went to heaven. How you know that? How you know people? See, a person may be in a room by themselves, and they may be like the man I visited on dialysis this week, and he was in such humongous pain, and he's in the room there for a while by himself. He might have just called on God right there at that moment. He might have just got saved. They don't know. So you're not with people 24 hours a day, and in their pain and their suffering and their trials, they may call on God, and God may save them. They may have lived a life of drinking and doping and carousing and all that stuff. You don't know who's in heaven, and you don't know who's in hell. You can guess at it, but you don't know. So you can take a long guess, but you don't know. Because you don't know a person's heart. You can't see inside. God can. Well, you say, I'm a fruit inspector. Well, inspect all the fruits you want. But that don't mean that you know whether they went to heaven or not. You can think they didn't go to heaven. And you can say, you can judge, but you don't know for sure, do you? Therefore, judge nothing before the time. Till the Lord come, he'll bring both. So, when Chris Flack passed away, we failed. I failed him as a pastor. I didn't visit him enough. Sunday school teachers failed. They didn't visit him at all. Dads and moms failed. Grandparents failed. We all fail when we lose a child like that. We lost David Kimball. We lost Rusty Campbell. We lost Melody Carter. We lost Corey Robinson. We lost Tim Baker, a fireman over here. He's 18 years old. He was killed going down an embankment, hit a tree and died. And on I could go. All these young people has died at Trinity Baptist Church. And all of us fail. We fail to witness to people. There are all kind of visitors in here today. But you're busy ready to get ready to you're ready to get down the restaurant and prop up your feet. The rest of them Baptists and gossip on everything that went on today in church and prop up your feet. But see, you're going to rush on out of the building. You're not really concerned about souls. You're concerned about your fat belly. Right? You're not concerned about nobody dying going to hell. There's all kind of people in this building today that are lost. You don't have time to witness to them, right? You got to go feed your face and then go home and plop up and wonder why you're getting as big as a house. And so we all failed. And Chris, I did a acrostic of his funeral. C stands for he was a caring person, very quiet, very humble. He had the characteristics of his family. Greg's daddy is a very quiet man. His mother's a very noisy person. She makes a lot of noise if you've ever been around Mrs. Flack. And Mr. Flack is a very quiet person. And Greg is very quiet, and so Chris was like those men. The H in Chris's name stands for humble. He was an humble person. He walked before God. God said in Micah, what does God require that you walk humbly before him? So many proud people today. I've never seen so many proud, easily offended people in my whole life. R stands for redeemed by the blood. Brother Terry helped guide him over into heaven, claimed to get saved. We baptized him. The I stand for independent. He had an independent spirit. He wanted everything his way. And the S in his name stands for slipping. Chris had let things slip in his life. Are you letting things slip this morning? He'll let things slip like Melody let things slip. You see, you start slipping. You take for granted your salvation, you know. A lot of people take for granted their salvation. They start slipping. The hearts become hard toward life. And they start going astray, and then they start losing those strong desires to serve God and love the church and the Bible and prayer and attend. And they start slipping, and you'll start slipping, you know. And people start slipping away from God. That's all they do. They start prone to wander, prone to leave the God I love. That's what Robert Robertson wrote in that song, Count Fount of Blessings. And we start slipping and we start slipping. There's a lot of people in here today slipping. And you feel good, you slip off somewhere and flop around when you should face your responsibilities at church, and you flop around on Saturday night. And you forget that testimony I had to get on Johnny McGill one time about his duty is to be at his own church, and he's flopping around somewhere on Saturday night, messing around when he should have been at his own church. His youth director set an example. He got that lesson and never forgot it, which made him a better person, because God is looking for faithfulness. And so people, they just stray and they start slipping, and they're slipping here and they slip there and they slip over here and they slip and slide everywhere. If you will, let's go to 2 Samuel chapter 12. 2 Samuel chapter 12. You know, this could be the day you die. Brother Ronnie Abbott's sister's husband, a young teenager, ran a stop sign this week, and he ran over and killed him. Killed him instantly. Just like that. Gone right out there, just a mile from my house. Bad intersection there. Little boys come along, missed the stop sign, run through, boom. Car's totally crushed. I think one of them's still laying up yonder in general fighting for his life. And Dean ran over that boy and couldn't stop the van. Dean couldn't stop. Sad what these teenagers are dying. They can't drive. They don't need a driver's license. They're about 21 anyway. They can't drive. They're running all over the place like a bunch of wild Indians. They don't know any limitations. They just know one speed, wide open. That's what always worried about me about Melody. I always wondered who she's going to kill before she ever got right with God. In 2 Samuel chapter 12, David, it's been a year since he had a woman's husband killed, Uriah. And he took her, committed adultery with her, and had her husband murdered. And here he is going along about his duties. It took a year for God to get him, but see, sin takes a year to come to fruition. And so here's old David, and things have gotten by with this, and God sends a preacher down there named Nathan. God will get you sooner or later. May not be me, be another man of God, but God will get you because He made you. He created you. His Son died for you, and you belong to God. So whether you live or die, you are the Lord's. And in 2 Samuel 7, and Nathan said to David, "Thou art the man, thus saith the Lord God of Israel, I anoint thee to be king over Israel, and I deliver thee out of the hand of Saul." Nathan tells David about all God done for him. He stole this man's wife when David had all kind of wives. He had 8 to 10 wives. He was into polygamy, big time. Stole another man's wife. "And I gave thee thy master's house and thy master's wives into thy bosom, and gave thee the house of Israel and Judah." But see, he wasn't satisfied with that. He wanted more. He's greedy. And so he wanted another man, and he got greedy. And he got greedy. And God tells him right here, if that had been too little, I would have moreover given thee such and such things. See, you don't have to go outside the will of God. If you want something, God, you talk to God, God will give it to you. And so David went outside the will of God and messed up. And so verse 9, "Wherefore thou hast despised the commandment of the Lord, to do evil in his sight. Thou hast killed Uriah the Hittite with a sword, and thou hast taken his wife to be thy wife, and hast slain him with the sword of the children of Ammon. And now therefore the sword shall never depart from thine house." Some people got a sword in their house that will never depart. They're out doing things wrong. They're out living in sin, and they're out messing with cocaine. They're out messing with gambling and cards, and they're out messing with liquor and everything else. And the sword will never leave their house. They'll always have unusual suffering. He says, "I will take thy wives before thine eyes and give them to thy neighbor, and he shall lie with thy wives inside of this son. For thou didst it secretly, but I will do this thing before all Israel before the sun." David said, "Nathan, I have sinned greatly." He's one of the 11 men in the Bible who said, "I've sinned." There's only 11 men in the Bible who said, "I've sinned." It's hard for people to say, "I have sinned." Well, Ricky Coker sinned. Well, Pastor Carter sinned. Well, Linda Carter sinned. Daryl Finch sinned. But I haven't sinned. It's hard for people to say, "I have sinned." They can't say it. So it's hard for them to do it. So I have sinned against the Lord's pride. And they said to David, "The Lord hath put away thy sin, but thou shalt not die." God's fitting to kill old David. So David, he took off all his clothes, started fasting, saw his servants whispering, knew the baby had died. So David went to the grave of his son. Listen to what he says in verse 22. "And he said, while the child was yet alive." Is your child alive right now? You better not stop talking. If your child's alive right now, listen, you can't go up there and talk to Chris Flack today. He's gone. You can't go up there and talk to Melody Carter today. She's gone. You can't go out there and talk to Rusty Cameron today. He's gone. You can't go over there and talk to David Kimball today. He's gone. Hey, is your child still alive? You better get to talking. You better start talking. Some of you daddies, God help your rotten hide. You don't live for God. You don't come to church half the time. You don't practice church membership. You don't tithe. You don't do everything else. And I'm going to tell you something. Your kid's going to fall right in your line, and you're going to reap. You don't think so today, and you think you're going to bypass that reaping, but you put this down, buddy. You put this in your pipe and don't light it. You are going to reap what you sow, and you're going to see it in your children. And sometimes God is going to take some of those kids away from you that he might raise them apart from you. It's already happened in this church this week. While he's yet alive, while he's breathing, I better talk to Marla. While Patrick's breathing, I better talk to him. While Dennis is breathing, I better talk to him. While he's breathing, while he's yet alive. And I fasted and wept. For I said, who can tell whether God will be gracious to me that the child may live? He didn't know. He didn't know if that child's going to live or die. He didn't know. You don't know either. You don't know these children are very special, and they're very special to God, and God gave you a very special thing. He gave you those child, and you better pull them up close to your bosom, and when God gave you a child, he gave you a very special thing, and you better take that as special, and you better quit playing around on God, because God could just pick up that child and get your attention real fast. Verse 23, now he is dead. Too late now? Child's dead. Gone. It's too late now. David, he wept and wept and wept and cried, oh, Absalom, oh, Absalom, oh, Absalom, Absalom. He wept and wept and wept and wept and said, Absalom, oh, Absalom, oh, Absalom, oh, Absalom, Absalom, oh, Absalom, Absalom, Absalom. And finally, Joab had to step in and say, hey, David, come back to reality, boy. The reason your boy's like that is because that's the way you lived. So it brought David back to reality. Somebody had to bring David back to reality. You can read that on in preceding chapters. But now he's dead. Wherefore should I fast? Now notice this right here. Can I bring him back again? That's a question. David said, can he come back to me from the grave? See, there's no returning to sermons. Once you are dead, there is no coming back to Sunday school. There is no coming back to sermons. There's no coming back to singing. There's no coming back to testifying. There's no coming back to shouting. There's no coming back to witness. There's no coming back. Once you're gone, that's it, buddy. You're gone. There is no coming back to parents' home. There is no coming home to mom and daddy. There is no coming home to the dinner table. There is no coming home to the couch. There is no coming home to talk. Hey, once you're dead, it's over with, brother. You're gone. David said, hey, David, watch what he said. He says, watch, but now he's dead. Wherefore shall I fast? Can I bring him back again? No, the question answer is no, he cannot. He can't. Listen, there's no returning to lost Sundays. Once you lose those Sundays, there's no coming back. There's no returning to the job. There's no coming back. I was in here Wednesday night, and there's a bunch of little grandkids running around here Sunday. And I said to the lady, where's the grandkids at? Well, they're over to other grandmas. Well, the daddy swore up and down to me that those kids would never go to the other grandma because the other grandma, she don't live for God. She doesn't attend church. She doesn't tithe. She doesn't pray. She doesn't read the Bible. She doesn't live for God in any way. She just runs around with different men and lives a lifestyle that's not conducive to building up godliness. And he said she'll never do that, but yet he don't care about him this morning. He got a job making money, and so now those little grandkids, they fend for themselves, and they're passed from place to place, and that which he said would never be is now is. And so there's no returning to the job. And so David said, I can't return him from the grave. I can't go out to that grave out yonder and resurrect my own daughter. Can I bring him back again? The answer to that's no. So David said, listen, and these 5 little words, I shall go to him. That's a certainty. That's positiveness. David was a saved man. David was a man that was born again. He said, my son can't come back to me, but I guess I can go to him. I shall go to him. That's a certainty. I shall go to him. That is a certain thing that you go to him. Hey, will you go to your child in heaven? Is it certain in your heart right now that when you die and close your eyes that you will be with your child? Is that a certainty? Do you know that for sure? He said, but he shall not return to me. Would you circle the word return? He's not coming back. There is no return. But he shall not return to me. See, there's a certainty. Jody Jett had a terrible car wreck. Jody Jett had a wonderful, godly daughter named Deborah. And she said to me that she could hear Deborah's voice calling to her. Deborah died of a terrible disease, and Bob would go down and give his blood from the barbershop at Pinewood, and they would take the platelets out of those bloods to out of that blood to try to save his daughter's life, Deborah. And he would go there, and Jody was lost, and Jody was stubborn, and resistant to the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so Deborah went to heaven, and Jody said she could hear Deborah's voice, and Deborah calling her, and always calling her to be saved. And one day, Jody got gloriously saved. She got gloriously saved. And she said to me, you know what, preacher? I don't hear Deborah calling me anymore. I don't hear Deborah's voice anymore. Why? Because she got gloriously saved. She got gloriously saved. I was listening to J. Harold Smith. He was over at Channel 16 talking to Brother Thompson that owns Channel 16. And Brother Thompson said, Harold, I hear you lost your wife. I believe J. Harold led Brother Thompson to the Lord and his family out on visitation one day. I know he led 650 of them Southern Baptist preachers to God. But he was telling Brother Thompson, he said, I took Murda's home, and the lady was Linda's bridesmaid at the wedding was Murda's Rush, who was named after J. Harold's wife. And he said, I took Murda's home and I put her in the living room. And he said, I got up at 4 o'clock in the morning and I walked into that living room. And I knelt down beside that casket. And he said, I wept and wept and wept. And I put my hand over in that casket and I held on to Murda's hand. And he said, I wept and wept and wept. I knew this would be the last time I'd see her until Jesus took me home. And he said, you know, when Murda's and I knew each other's kids, went to grade school together, and he said, I'd go out and beat the erasers on the side of the building. You remember that, if you're old enough to remember that. I used to beat the erasers off the side of the building for the teacher. He said, I'd go out and beat the erasers off top on the side of the building, and said, Murda's would leave a note on my desk. She said, J. Harold, I'm walking home, but I'm walking real slow because I know that you'll be catching up with me in a few minutes. And she said, I'm walking slow enough for you to catch up with me in a few minutes when you get done dusting those erasers. And he said, you know, Brother Thompson, he said, Murda's appeared in that room. And J. Harold was pastoring over in Greenville, had one of the finest works in Greenville that's ever been. He's pastored some great churches. Had a great church at Woodland Park Baptist Church in Chattanooga, run over 2,500. But he's up the street from Lee Robertson, who run about 3,000. And he said, this town ain't big enough for me and Lee Robertson both. So he moved there and went to Fort Smith, Arkansas, and had a contract signed that they couldn't mess with him unless he got into immorality or got off doctrinally. They'd leave him alone and not bother him with pettiness. And he built 5 buildings out there and built a magnificent work for God. Then he went into evangelism. He's a powerful man of God. But anyway, he was in Greenville, and God told him to go to Knoxville and march those people down the street over Knoxville against the liquor crowd. And he said, I don't want to leave Greenville. Knoxville is full of mills, and it's dirty and nasty, and got those foundries and all that. He didn't want to go. But he came home, and Sonny died on the front porch of the house. And he buried Sonny over there in Woodlawn, where him and his wife was buried this morning. And he said, when I put Sonny in the ground, I said, Lord, whatever you want me to do now, I'm ready. I won't hold back anything else from you ever. He said, Sonny's a little bitty baby boy. Took and buried him. Went off to Knoxville, and he did a great job there against the liquor crowd. They hated him. He said, Brother Thompson, Murda's came in that room and said, look what I got, Harold. And he said he looked up and saw the most handsome boy he ever saw in his life, about 30 years of age or more older. She said, this is Sonny, Harold. And he looked, and she said, we're waiting on you on the other side, Harold. Me and Sonny's waiting on you. You getting that? Me and Sonny's waiting on you. And Harold broke down. Hey, listen, you got anybody waiting on you on the side? You got anybody like Chris or Melody or those other kids waiting on you? Corey Robertson, you got any Corey Robertsons waiting on you on the other side? Have you got anybody waiting on the other side? Then in God's name, why are you so drifting and apostatizing and drifting your Christian life and slipping around and messing around in your Christian life? In God's name, why are you fooling around? You boys and girls, why are you fooling around? You better quit fooling around. He said, I can't go to him, but he'll come to me. Listen. Turn on Matthew 17. Will you be, where you'll have the same name and everything in heaven? Jesus went on the Mount of Transfiguration. In Matthew 17, the disciples saw the Shekinah glory come upon Jesus, and boy, they wanted to stay there and build 3 tabernacles and just hang out there. And they had to go back down the valley because the man needed help, and they couldn't help his son. And Jesus went back there and helped him. But on Matthew 17 and verse number 1, it said, after 6 days, Jesus taketh Peter, James, and John as inner circle, his brother, and bringeth them up into a high mountain apart, and was transfigured before them. That means Shekinah glory shone through to Jesus. And buddy, for the first time, Peter, James, and John saw the power of God and the glory of God upon Jesus there. And they beheld, there appeared unto them Moses and Elijah talking with them. Moses and Elijah had been in heaven for a long time now. Yet on that Mount of Transfiguration, here comes Moses and Elijah down to talk with Peter, James, and John. And the Lord there on that mountain, they had the same name, had the same personality, and they were recognized as Moses and Elijah. What will you be like? You'll be the same here as you are in heaven, friend. You just have a glorified body. You'll still be Daryl. You'll still be Linda. You'll still be Dennis. You'll still be Ronnie. You'll still be Raleigh. You'll still be Donna. Hey, you'll be the same person. You'll just be in a glorified body. But you will be there and have the same name. You'll be there. And here they are. Hey, listen. You boys and girls, why you fool around? Start messing around. Turn to Hebrews chapter 2. Why you fool around? Why you people slip around and mess around on God? I don't get it. I don't get it. Some of you people know history and know all these things, and yet you're dumber than a box of rocks when it comes to obedience, serving God. You know all these politics, you know all these ball players, you know all these vacation spots, you know all these places you ride and get apples and oranges and peaches and everything else, but you know very little about obeying God and doing what's right. You just flip around when it comes to tending God's house. Flip around when it comes to where you ought to be. Just flipping around. When it comes to tithing, you're just flipping around. Notice Hebrews 2 and verse 1. He said in Hebrews 2 and verse number 1. Notice what he says. Hebrews 2 verse 1. Hebrews 2 verse 1. Look at it. Therefore. What is that therefore for? It's there to let you know in chapter 1, God is talking last days through his son Jesus. You don't have to worry about North Korea, friend. Don't worry about them. Don't worry. They're not going nowhere. That's a dummy. That's a punk. Listen, there is the Confederacy of Russia, Japan, Iran, Iraq, all those nations, North Korea, Thailand, North Vietnam, they're all coming together to form the Confederacy to go against Israel. They got no interest in us except the fact they want to be rid of us and get us off their land. Hey, listen, those are nomadic people. They're tribal people. They don't like company. And they don't like us. They don't like us coming to stay. They want us to come and help them with their problems and then get out of their country. Their law demands that they don't have any company. They don't want anybody around. They'll always be like that. You know why they can't get peace in Pakistan? There are 12 tribes there. You know why they can't get peace over in India? They got all those tribes there. You know why they can't get peace in Iran? It's because they got 3 different types of tribes there. My goodness, they got 3 different types of people. It'd be like this morning. We had Mexicans in here. We had African Americans. We had Japanese and Iranians. And we had all that diversity in here. You can't please all that crowd. And you can't please all those tribes. They all got a different way of thinking. And they've been like that for 3,000 years. And the only person to ever straighten them out and get them on the right road is the Lord Jesus Christ. Then you have the Egyptian Confederacy, be Egypt, and all those Arab nations going to join together. Have all those confederacies. You don't have to worry about that. Hey, listen, America is going to suffer because of her sins. She has a great long sin tab. We are going to a third-rate power. We're going to go to a third-rate world. Hey, listen, there are people, veterans all over this country slept in the streets last night. The average age of hunger in this country is 9 years of age. Hey, listen, they're fixing to cut out the middle class in this country, and they're going to be rich people and poor people. That's it, friend. The rich are getting richer, and the poor are getting poorer. And that's why you're working 2 and 3 jobs to try to keep up. You're trying to keep up. Hey, you're scratching, clawing. I mean, brother, you're on pins and needles. Hey, your job is going. Do you know how much money these people got in their pocket that belongs to God? We'd have to do nothing but stop today and count money if we got all these people in here right with God just paid their money. that they owe God. You don't have anybody calling you like a bill collector collecting on you, but God's going to collect on you. Therefore, to give the more earnest heed to the things which we have heard, lest at any time we should let them slip. See that? Let them slip away. See, people letting their church attendance slip away. They're letting their prayer slip away. The word of God slip away. Soul slip away. They're letting all these things slip away. What is the hope? Well, the hope is this. Look at Psalm 28. The hope is this, friend. Here's the hope. Here is the hope. I told you in this church, I told you 3 months ago that these folks who's prayed up here and sing better live something. We're about down to Linda Pittman, and that's about it. If you're going to sing it, brother, you're going to have to live it. We had 80 people here praying last night. My God, what do you think God's going to do with a church with 80 people in it praying that the church will stay clean and stay right and have revival, have the power of God on it? You can't get up here and play games. But that's what we're doing. Psalm 28. Unto thee will I cry, O Lord, my rock. Be not silent to me, lest if thou be silent to me, I become like that which go down the pit. Look at verse number 9. Save thy people and bless thy inheritance. Feed them also. Now get this right here. And lift them up forever. God's people need lifting up. Their character's bad. People need lifting up. Their character's rotten to the core. God's people need lifting up in their character. They need lifting up in their life. And they need lifting up. In loving kindness, Jesus came. My soul in mercy to reclaim. In loving kindness, Jesus lifted me. He lifted me. I'm not on the plane I used to be on. I'm on a higher plane now. I don't gravel down here around in the world. Well, let's flip the page here. Let's look at something else. I'm talking to you about Chris. When we lost Chris, the Sunday school teachers, we all failed. We failed as a pastor. We failed as soul winners. Failed as deacons, everywhere around. Chris is a caring person. He was like his dad. And Mr. Waters, K. Webb's daddy. H in his name stands for humble. R stands for redeemed by the precious blood. He was baptized on January 30th, 1983. He had an independent spirit. But Chris had something else. The S in his name stands for slipping. He had let things start slipping. He let his church attendance start slipping. See, if you get careless in your Christian life, things will start to slip away from you. They'll start to slip away. They'll start to slip away. I have a speaking engagement on a Saturday. Big speaking engagement. So I was riding down the road with one of my kids, and I said, listen, I got this big speaking engagement. Big speaking engagement. Prestigious speaking engagement. And I said, where would you rather be? At this speaking engagement? Or would you rather be in Saturday night prayer meeting? What are we going to do? So we vote. What are we going to do? We vote. And they all said with one accord, we want to be in Saturday night prayer meeting. So I called the fellow that I was going to do the speaking for, and I said, I can't come. I can't come. I cannot come. Why? Because it's 7 o'clock Saturday night I have prayer meeting. So I didn't go. You see, after you make your decisions, they turn around and make you. After you make your decisions, they turn around and make you. After you make your decisions, they turn around and make you. Are you listening to me? There was a man in the General Hospital. He was an elderly man, sweet man. Son was a Baptist preacher, Southern Baptist preacher. And he called me on the telephone. He said, Brother Dennis, would you mind coming up here and praying with my dad? I said, no, I'll come up here and pray with him. He said, my daddy's saved. He's dying. He said, we want you to pray with us as a family. I said, okay, I'll come up there. Went up to the hospital to pray with that Southern Baptist preacher and his family. A few hours, his daddy died and went out into eternity. They thanked me for coming, patted me on the back. Sometimes they see me out different places. They'll buy my lunch or something for coming up there that day to pray with the family. That godly man was laying a corpse right there. Took him up there on the other side of Gaffney to have a funeral. Southern Baptist preacher got up to preach. And he saw in the back one of the boys. There was this man's boy. Backslid, away from God, not living for God. Sitting in the back. So he pressured down real hard to try to get that boy in the back to come forward during this funeral. Because you're tender-hearted. No other time people are tender-hearted like they are at the funeral. And he pressured him in the back to come to God. He didn't come. Walked out of the building, didn't go to graveside. That's his daddy. A couple of days later, he's riding down the road, and a highwayman pulled him over for bobbing and weaving on the road. But in the front seat, he had just bought some crack cocaine. Well, there was a highwayman fixing to get out of the car and put his hat on, walk up to the car and get the driver's license and registration. So the highwayman came up and got the driver's license and the registration and said, "You sit right here, buddy, and I'll be right back when I run this on the computer." While he was going back to his car to run that driver's license and registration on the computer, that boy stuffed that cocaine in his mouth. All those rocks of cocaine in his mouth. That cocaine dissolved and went through his bloodstream like a bullet. And when the policeman came back up to say he checked out good on his driver's license and his registration, his head was laying on the steering wheel. The highwayman pushed him back like this, and he was dead. 2 days after he's in that funeral. He was dead. Put rock cocaine in his mouth. And the rock cocaine, uncut, pure stuff, killed him instantly. I was called to the emergency room as a man coming out of the tavern on 221 in Woodruff. And he was at a high rate of speed, and he had his buddy with him, and the car rolled over 3 times on an embankment. On the 3rd time, the car rolled over him because he had the window down. He's drunk. It was close to midnight, and it rolled over on him and mashed him and killed him instantly. He just left that tavern in Woodruff. His mama came to this church. Never could get nothing out of the daddy. Never could get nothing out of the rest of them kids. Never could get his mom would come. She'd come here and sometimes play the piano and sing. I had his funeral at Lanford Funeral Home down in Woodruff. That place was wall to wall on a Saturday. You couldn't get another seat. It was wall to wall. I guess every tavern in that area was represented by 50 to 60 people. And in the back, there was a man. I noticed he latched on to what I was preaching. The man in the back latched on to what I was preaching. And so I just kept preaching to him the gospel, and I gave the invitation, and I couldn't get that man to move. I could not get that man to move 1 inch. I couldn't get him to budge. His wife loved God, played the piano, sang, but you couldn't get him to do nothing for God. And so on a Sunday morning after I had that on Saturday, I looked up back there where Mark Holland's sitting right now, and there stood that man in the service, in the song service. I was sitting right over there. I looked out there, saw him. I pressured him down, man. Tried to get him to God. I tried to get him to God. I tried to get him to God. His brother came with him to this church and tried to get him down the aisle while I was preaching. He couldn't get him to budge. He was coming out of one of those taverns down there below Woodruff. And he's coming down the road. The car rolled over, and on the side of it, it got that piece of metal. That piece of metal on that door panel went right through his side, right up into his lung. Snapped his neck, broke 12 vertebrae in his neck. I got up there to the general, and he's in the room, and he's working with him in the room, and they was putting this crown on his head. They were screwing these bolts in, putting this thing around, screwing these bolts in, screwing these bolts in here, and screwing them in here, and screwing them into his flesh here, and screwing them in his flesh there. And they were pulling that thing out of his side, and they were putting a tube in there to suck out all that infection and suck out all that old dirt and everything else out of the side of it. And so the brother said to the nurse, this is my preacher. I want him to talk to my brother about God. She said, okay, make it brief. I went in there. I knelt down. There he was, that crown on. His head wasn't on the bed. His head had all those screws all in through his head. They done screwed it into his flesh. They done put that thing down, those bars down the side of the back of his neck, and they done straightened out those vertebrae down in through there. And he was pulling that thing out. That thing was sucking into a jar over on the side. I couldn't get him to even grunt. And then a few days later, the phone rang, and he was gone. You know what he did? He let them things slip. See, you get into the place where you let them slip. See, you get bored. You get bored with church. You get bored with the things of God, and you start letting things slip. Start letting your attendance slip. Start letting your tithe slip. Start letting your prayer slip. Start letting your Bible reading slip. Start letting these things slip. And all of a sudden, you get that place in life, you think, well, hey, buddy, I'm pretty well off. I'm at a place now. Listen, I'm almost 60 years old. I'm at a place now. I can kind of cruise through life. You got to be out of your mind. You got to be out of your mind. There's no cruising in this job. There's no cruising in the Christian life. There's no off time for a Christian. You're on duty 24 hours a day. There's no time when you go off and live a while for yourself. No, sir, buddy. You die to self and live totally into God. I was in the doctor's office. Had to have a lab test this week. And there stood a woman whose husband was an immaculate piano player. She was a receptionist. I gave her one of those books. And he was pulling weeds on a Saturday, pulling weeds, and dropped dead of a heart attack. And I talked to her there, and she was crying. I said, you know, I can't believe how that slipped away so fast. She said, me neither. Are you listening to me? Are you listening to me? Are you listening to me? Turn on Isaiah. Turn over to Deuteronomy 32. I'm going to give you this, and I'm going to quit. In a few days, on July the 18th, Melody died. In a few days, on July the 19th, we buried Chris. On July the 21st, we buried Melody. We buried these people. They're never coming back to us. But the question is, are we going to go to them? That's the question today. Have you got enough salvation today to go to God? Deuteronomy 32. Deuteronomy 32. Look at verse 26. God said, Deuteronomy 32 and verse 26, I said I would scatter them into the corners. I would make the remembrance of them to cease from among men. God scattered Israel into four corners, north, south, east, and west. That's where they're at. They're going back home. Verse 27. Were it not that I feared the wrath of the enemy, lest their adversities should behave themselves strangely, lest they should say, our hand is high, the Lord hath done all this. Verse 28. For there are a nation void of counsel. You know, you can't talk to some people, and sometimes you can't talk to some nations. That guy over there in North Korea, he is void of understanding. He does not understand anything but power. He doesn't understand anything. He doesn't understand anything but bombs. He doesn't understand anything but intimidation and fear and anxiety. That's all he understands. He's void of understanding. That guy's not going to understand nothing. They try to get him to understand. For they're a nation void of counsel. There is none any understanding in them. There's no understanding in North Korea. You never understand them. They're crazy. It's a crazy man. That man's a crazy man. Fidel Castro's a crazy man. He rants and raves like a crazy man. When he went to New York City, before they banned him coming over here to America, he took 2 chickens in a plush motel in New York City and stripped those chickens and plucked them and cooked them in the room. He's a nasty man. Don't have time, don't take a bath. Void of understanding. People treat China. You can't reason with Fidel Castro. There's no reason in him. They're waiting on him to die. And good riddance to him. Good riddance to Saddam Hussein. Good riddance to Bin Laden. They don't understand in him. Verse 29. You know, a man who builds a bomb with ball bearings and nails and every other ungodly thing in it and sets it off in a crowd of people that's eating in a restaurant, that man's a crazy man. Now you go ahead and pet him if you want to. He said, oh, that they were wise, they understood this. Notice that they would consider their end, their latter end. Do you think, Kim's son, Il, or whatever his stupid name is, do you think that guy thinks he's going to die? He don't think he's going to die. Do you think Saddam Hussein thinks he's going to be hung? He don't think that. Do you think Milosevic of Kosovo, do you think he thought he was going to die? No, he's dead in hell right now. Killed enough people, man, to fill this building. These people, sympathy seekers, these people. That old Andrea Yates up there killed 5 of her children, and the psychiatrist said that last one was running and clawing for his very life, giving her a retrial. They wasn't nutty enough the first trial. They want to get a little nuttier. Look at verse 30. How should one chase 1,000, 2 chase 10,000? He reminds them, except the rocket sold them, and the rocket shut them up. You see, the only way they made it, the only way they did it was God was their rock. He was their rock. Look at verse 32. For their vine is the vine of Sodom and the fields of Gomorrah. Their grapes are grapes of gall. Their clusters are bitter. Their wine is the poison of dragon and the cruel venom of asp. They drank in a deadly drink. How can a man drink the drink of the devil and drink the cup of the Lord? He can't do it. A man can't drink out of two cups, and you can't live two lives. You can't serve two masters. You got to serve one or serve the other. And that's how revival comes. Revival comes. Do you see all these churches with all these old merry-go-rounds and with all these old clowns and that stuff? You know what that tells you? That Jesus doesn't satisfy that place. They got to have something candy stick to go with that. A man told me recently that one of these big churches in town is down to just about little old cell groups on Sunday night, and on Wednesday night it's so skimpy that they're just about to put away Wednesday night, and they're thinking about cutting out Sunday night. One of these big super churches here in Spartanburg. You know why? People are bored with all this religion. They're bored with it. It's not satisfying them. People are not getting satisfied. Listen, Jesus is the only thing that satisfies, friend. Jesus, these people can't get satisfied. I told you about Jerry Garcia, who died of the Grateful Dead. And while they were weeping on the casket, they was taping and putting marijuana smokes in his pocket, saying, you know, Jerry, when he gets where he's going, he may want to light up and smoke one and get a little high. Yeah, that's right. Old Frank Sinatra died, and I told you Wednesday night, they put a fifth of liquor, Jack Daniels, in his coffin and 10 dimes. Said, old Frank may want to call us somewhere. And his Zippo lighter. Frank ain't going to call nobody. Kurt Cobain, while he was dying, laying again, they's taping different drugs up under his casket. So, Kurt, he killed himself in his mansion. Kurt might want a little something when he gets somewhere where he's going. Jimi Hendrix said, I had a picture of Jimi Hendrix. He said on the bottom caption of his picture, he said, I've been on cocaine so much that when I die, the cops will probably bust me at my funeral because I'm on so much cocaine. Heart busted. The corridor between 85, just caught those two black people out there, that big old pounds of cocaine. The corridor between Florida and all the way up north is the corridor right here that runs by our church. And last year, 79 people were killed in that corridor because of the drug turf wars. It's become such a corridor. They put up a special elite force from out toward that old arc toward this way, put up a special elite force, unmarked cars with tainted windows to try to break this drug traffic that's going from Florida all the way up 85, all the way up into those New York and up into those eastern cities. Last year, 79 people were shot to death. 27 people were shot to death downtown Spartanburg. Mr. De Silva, right there on the corner. Mr. De Silva, I know him well. He goes to Methodist Church. Mr. De Silva has a watch repair, rings, all kind of stuff shop there. He now carries a gun, sticks it in his belt buckle, and will not take that gun out. He's been robbed twice, and right there on the corner, Mr. De Silva said, there will be no times when people come in my store, I don't have this gun tucked in my belt buckle. I'm tired of it. That's downtown Spartanburg where they renewal and got all these nice buildings. And I went down there, downtown Spartanburg Friday night. They had to drink, and these young people out drinking, Brother Darrell. He's out sitting around on that Daniel Morgan thing, drinking, and he's drinking beer and had open containers and everything else and partying and laughing and cutting up and had all these skimpily dressed women and had all that stuff. And I thought, my God, trying to get people back downtown Spartanburg. And they block all these things down here, and the Horseshoe saloons down there. They wanted to try to close it. One of those churches did, and they block off these streets down there during the weekends. And they have country music and they have rock and roll music. And Budweiser pulls up a big old thing, and they sit there and suck suds and dance in the middle of the street. It's just like Sodom and Gomorrah. And all these preachers right here with these great big churches, they got lockjaw. They're petrified to say anything because they live in these gated communities and got all these big cars and these big thick rugs and got all these big suits and got all these big bonuses and all these big salaries and all these big trips. They got lockjaw. While the world just slips off into hell. Turn to Isaiah 55. I got to find a place to quit here. Slipping. We're losing our children, buddy, to suicide and everything else. The price we're paying is not worth it when we're losing our children to suicide and all these things. I lost my own child through it. Isaiah 55, verse 7. Seek ye the Lord while he may be found. Call upon him while he is near. Verse 7, let the wicked forsake his way. That's gross sins, you know. Wicked is gross sins. That's drinking, gambling, doping, lying, rebelling, stealing. That's disobeying parents. And the unrighteous man his thoughts. That's thoughts, you know, about, hey, I'm gonna make it. It's not going to bother me. And he's not thinking like God intended for him to think. And let him return to the Lord and have mercy upon him, to our God, for he will abundantly pardon. Larry King asked our president, 2,500 something these boys did. He asked our president the other night, exclusive interview with George Bush. He said, Mr. Bush, have you attended any of these funerals of these 2,535 boys that's died? Well, he said, no, Larry, I haven't attended any of them. He said, I really haven't attended any of them, and here's the reason why. I don't want to miss one of them. If I start attending funerals, I might miss somebody. That wasn't Ronald Reagan's philosophy. Ronald Reagan's philosophy was to meet him at Dover Air Force Base when they brought him in. Did you know these boys that's come in, some of them have been left in baggage sections? Other day they had one of them, they lost him and found him up here somewhere in a warehouse. They'd lost him. He done got lost in the mail. Lost him. The daddy was irate. The daddy was almost crazy with anger. Hey, listen, they lost him. Lost him in the mail. He's just like something you put on an UPS truck and ship him back to your family. And then we wonder if Al-Qaeda is going to hit us again. I wonder if we're going to have any more terrorist problems. Lord have mercy. And it's been 3 years later since that 9/11, and we still our number one defense is run. That's what it said the other day. What do we do if a terrorist attack happens? What is our run? Run. What do you mean run? Run. Just run anywhere. Just run any direction. That's our defense. So if you hear a bomb go off, just run any direction. That's it. I watched Dateline last night. In 9 weeks, they picked up 95 pedophiles. In fact, they arrested them so fast from Dateline, setting up these sting operations. Dateline was. The first 2 stings set up, the police didn't come at all. The police have now had to come because they're embarrassed. They don't have anywhere to put these people. But they've had 95 or so men caught in these stings in the last 9 weeks. Think about that. Some waiting trial. And these guys are visiting these houses and visiting these little girls. And this sheriff last night did not have enough men to arrest them. They were coming in so fast. They get rid of 5 and there'd be 5 more. Get rid of 5 and be 5 more. They couldn't take them down fast enough. The Bible says in the last days it shall be like Sodom and Gomorrah. It says that Sodom and Gomorrah, it wasn't 1 or 2 people with a lifestyle of loving men. It wasn't 1 or 2 men. It was a lifestyle. When I was in the cancer center and in some of these cancer wards, every 3 shifts had a homosexual on it. All 3 shifts. I'm trying to get well from a disease, and I'm not too sure that I'm not picking up a disease. I don't know what he's doing while I'm asleep. Do you? He knocks you out with something. Do you know what he's doing? I don't know what he's doing. I was with a guy in a business, and these politicians are running politicians. One of these politicians he was a doctor, and these women were being sedated, and he's waking up and noticed their blouse was undone and everything, and so they put an undercover woman in there. And the guy told me, he said, "Now you ought to vote for this guy right here, preacher. He's a good man. This is a good man." Well, the good man was putting these people to sleep and messing these women while he's asleep, while he's under this Novocaine and all this stuff. Put an undercover policewoman in there. And come to find out, that's what he was doing, is undressing these women while they were. A doctor recently was carving his initials in a woman's private parts while she was having a baby. He's carving his initials in there. We're living in the perilous days, friend. And then we go to church and preacher, will you just preach us something sweet? Just something sweet. we want to get back out there and get some more sin. We ain't got enough of it. Our youngins all ruined, and we all got some kind of disease. We got a judgment of disease upon us, and you can't look. This church got full of cancer, and these other churches full of cancer. And I talked to some preachers that day, and their members. Some of these preachers ain't preached in 2 months. They're so sick they can't preach. And we wonder, let's just get on back. Let's don't bother with all that. Let's just get on back to our living like we're living, and let's don't do all that stuff. All this praying and Bible reading, it just gets my nerves tore up and all that stuff and everything else. It just tears my nerves up. That's the way we're living. That's the way we're living. People couldn't tell you what I preached on 3 weeks ago. They couldn't tell you. They couldn't tell you. We're in a mess. And we're going to bury more of our children. Have you noticed around town that all these bridges are being named after young boys? This one over here just built, died and left his blood in Iraq. I saw 2 carloads of people almost get into a shootout on that bridge over there on Reeville Road just a few days ago. Listen, do you notice how they're making these highways up to here? The Hutchins family highway, that boy left his blood in Iraq. We're naming all these bridges and all these streets after our boys and girls that are dying. And we're just rocking along, believing everything these politicians say to us, and believing all that stuff they say to us. And everything's going to be rosy. And everything's going to be good. But it's not. And today we're grieving because we lost Chris Flack. We won't ever see him again unless we go to heaven. You will never see Chris Flack again unless you go to heaven. You will never see Maddie Carter again unless you go to heaven. You will never see Corey Robertson again unless you go to heaven. You won't do it. David said, he's not coming back to me. That's for a fact. He's not coming back here. But he said, I shall return to him. Now you notice the word return. That means he was sent. God sent that baby to David and Bathsheba. And then God in his mercy gave David and Bathsheba another son called Solomon. And because David was such a bloody man, God would let him build the temple, house of the Lord. But he did let him bring the materials to David, to Solomon, so Solomon could do it, but David couldn't do it because God didn't want a house of worship built by a man that was as bloody as David. And so he sent it to Solomon to do it. And David in his mercy, David lost his daughter to rape. He lost his one son, killed his other son, Ammon. Adonijah, while David was on his deathbed, Adonijah tried to get 50 men and take over the throne while David was on his deathbed. And Solomon rose up after Bathsheba told him that Adonijah is trying to take over the throne while your daddy's sick. And Solomon sent him to his house. He said, the day you leave your house, I'm going to kill you. The Israelis practice that today. They told that old Hamas, the founder of Hamas, they told him last year, they said, listen, they dropped leaflets. And they said, if you leave your house, we're going to kill you. And he's an old man, he's in a wheelchair, and he left his house. And they sent in one of those Cobra helicopters and killed him instantly. He didn't even get out of the driveway. They warned him. That's what Solomon did to Adonijah. He said, listen, if you leave your house or leave your yard, I'm going to kill you that day. But what you try to do here is take over the kingship from my daddy. And Adonijah died, and the Bible said at no time but David ever displeased Adonijah by telling him, Adonijah, you need to straighten up and live right, boy. No time but David said to Absalom, you need to straighten up and live right. And Joab killed Absalom. And David lost all those children because he was always out of sight. He was always not home. He was always busy. He was always running. I passed a little girl in here. Her mother worked for Eastern Airlines when Eastern Airlines was big. And I said, your mother be coming home today. When she said, my mother, when she comes home, said she's still up in the air. There's no need for her to come home. She don't care about us. She's always still up in the air, flying around up here somewhere. We're living in an hour now. We're living in an hour when you little girls running off and trying to find some little boy that you can't bring home to mom and daddy. I got news for you. If you can't bring that boy home to mom and daddy, you better leave him alone. I'm telling you a fact. I'm telling you, if you had to sneak around and meet him, you have to sneak around. Listen, I'm going to tell you what he's going to do. He's going to sneak around you. Hey, a missionary's kid called me yesterday. Fine missionary. If I called his name right now, you know it. Missionary's kid called me yesterday, and he wanted to counsel today. He's left his wife. And I said to Linda, he got somebody on the side. He got somebody on the side. And yesterday it came out he got somebody on the side. It was messing up his mind. And boy, listen, that missionary kid's mind's messed up. And wanted me to talk to him for 20 minutes to straighten out that mess they got into over the last few months. Can't do it, brother. Can't be done. And then you can't bring that boy home to mom and daddy, and mom and daddy can't find out if he's saved, and he lives for God, and he goes to the right church, and got the right Bible, and does he have devotions, and does he honor God, and does he tithe, and all that stuff. Benny Hinn said recently on his telecast that when he went home to meet his father-in-law, his future father-in-law, his father-in-law sat him down and he said, "Do you read the Bible?" And Benny said, "Yeah, I read the Bible." He said, "Do you pray?" Benny said, "Yeah, I pray." He said, "Do you attend church?" Benny said, "Yeah, I attend church every time the door's open." He said, well, now let me ask you a hard question here, Mr. Hinn. He said, "Do you tithe?" And Benny said, "Well, I occasionally tithe." He said, "The plate comes around, I feel like I drop in $5. Oh, he says, "You're a spasmodic giver." He said, "So that means my daughter shouldn't marry you because she ain't going to make it because you're a God robber." And Benny said, the old man said, "Call me a God robber." Said, "I got mad." Said, "You just call me a God robber." He said, "That's what you are, a God robber." And he said, the old man sat down and taught me about tithing. And he said, I learned something about tithing. And he said that him and his wife had not missed tithing since the old man sat him down and lectured him about tithing. But see, you can't bring a boy home, and if you can't bring the girl home, then you can't bring the girl home to meet mom and daddy, then something wrong with that relationship. Something's wrong with it already, because you're already in a mess because you can't bring them around the light. You're trying to keep them in the dark. I'm telling you a fact. When Melody wanted to marry this little boy, he came to my house. He sat out in my living room and he said to me, I want to marry Melody. I said, "Yeah." He said, you got too many rules and regulations on Melody. He said, you need to turn her loose and lighten up and let her live some. I said, "Well, I'll tell you what you do. You take her with and do all the living you want to do." But I said, "I want to tell you something, son. I raised her. And in 6 months to a year, you'll call me somewhere and give me a kiss. Because Melody's wild." He said, "You think so?" I said, "I know so." And so one night I was preaching, and Melody run off with a boy. Listen to me. Melody run off with a boy, and on Sunday night I walked out of the pulpit, walked right out there in the yard, and there stood Melody's husband. He pulled out a .38, and he said, "Listen, if the car had broke down, I would have killed Melody and that boy right there." He said, "She's been running around on me." And he said, "I would have took this gun and blowed her and him both away." And he said, "I chased him all the way through Greenville and all the way through other places." And he said, "I lost him." Are you listening to me? And the guy that Melody shacked up with, they were stealing this copper. You remember this guy yesterday got killed over here in Greenville, behind that Duke Power high transformer? He's cutting those copper wires, selling them for so much a pound. And he dropped dead right there. He done took all the identification off his body, so if he got caught. But that's what they're doing. They were stealing copper out of Bell South and all these places, and that's why they're going to get so much time in the penitentiary from all these places robbing. But see, I tried to tell Melody. And one night, her and that guy got in a fight, and he went out and he burned all her clothes and burned all of her pictures, and we still have them. All those pictures, he burned all of them, and some of those pictures didn't burn. And he tried to burn the Bible, and it didn't burn. Listen to me. Are you listening to me? And waited through all that torment and waited through all that sin, and then Melody got 2 or 3 diseases, and then died. She had 10 good years living in this church. 10 good years. The best years of Melody's life was living in this church, and she wouldn't date anybody. She wouldn't go out. She said, "I've learned my lesson." She said, "I won't leave this yard again." And she said, "I've learned my lesson about living in sin." She finally got it. Took all that hell to get it, but she finally got it. And so will you. So will you. And some of you guys, you just ain't got this picture that you need to sit your daughter down and say, "Honey, let Daddy talk to you one time." No, so you're trying to approach this with, does she like me? They don't care about that. They want somebody to tell them the truth. Are you listening to me? Brother Darrell's going to camp next week. You can't get in that camp. You can't get in that camp unless you're an elite young person who is trying their totally best to live for God. They don't take second raters. They don't take third raters. They take first raters. If you rate first, they take you. They're trying to build on a mission field to get people to go to the mission field, young people to go to the mission field, and they don't want anybody of bad character. And so they give you a list of no jam boxes, no rap music, no rock and roll, nothing but your Bible and your pen and a notebook, and come there to learn something about God for 1 week and then go out into a lost and dying world and win them to God. I want to say something. I'm trying to quit here. This is my niece right here. She's in Pakistan. She's in the Air Force. She's going to be a doctor. This is my niece here. She sent me this yesterday. She's going to be a doctor. She said, Uncle Dennis, I'm fixing to go back to Pakistan. I need a little help to get back to Pakistan. She said, can you help me get back to Pakistan? She's a medical doctor in the Air Force trying to win souls. She's got a Bible verse across the top of these Pakistani people. And she loves God. And she's trying to serve God. And she's trying to give God her best. That's what Daryl's looking for. Daryl is looking for this. Shannon Waters. He's not looking for people who want to smoke pot, live in sin, talk back, rebel, cuss him, cuss the work of God. He's looking for people who say, listen, I think God's called me to do something. And they're going to fan those fires and stroke those fires and make them stronger. You don't ever get over losing a child. Never. You don't ever get over losing. You never. The funeral director will tell you that you're not supposed to bury your children, they're supposed to bury you. But you will never get over burying a child. And you definitely will never get over burying a grandchild. You will never get over it. One day, a man pastored a New Life Baptist Church over here. I had him come preach for me. And he said when he first came to Spartanburg, he didn't know that he was going to lose his child. And he said, you know, I rode through Babyland out there at Green Lawn. I was riding through there with the funeral car. And he said, I'm burying my baby. Came to Spartanburg and I built this church over here at New Life. What was his name? You remember, Ricky? Jack Jarrett. Jack Jarrett. He preached here before for us. Ricky and them built that church. He said, I never dreamed I'd ever be riding through Babyland burying my own child. But that's what I did. And I just, I thought about that. I sat and thought about that while he preached about that, and his heart was broken right here behind this desk. And I thought, man, that'd be something. And then there I am riding through the cemetery doing the same thing. There's Greg Flack and Sue and Kate doing the same thing. And some of you are going to be doing the same thing if you don't quit slipping with your life and quit scheming and conniving and think you got the wool pulled over the preacher's eyes. Because you ain't. I'm going to ask Brother Patrick to come and sing our song, Just a Closer Walk with Thee. Friend, are you right with God today? Are you right? Are you one car wreck away from eternity? Are you one stop sign you missed from eternity? Just ride through it, one stop sign. Did you know the average teenager today is being killed by a teenage driver? He rides his friends. Did you know Jim Castellari picked me up one night on Maple Street at my house? Bobby Tinsley and I went into the Army together. We was best friends. We played sports together. And Jim Castellari got out there, and the guy, Holland Drag, we went on the edge of Centralia, and we rode down the road there, and it was on the wrong side of the road, and we was running 130 miles an hour in that car. Souped up, high-speed Chevrolet. Hirsch 4-shift the whole month. I let it speed on. We was doing 130 miles on the wrong side of the road. In our high school, we had 6 people at a study hall table. I sit at that study hall table. One of those guys at the study hall table bought that car. And one night he was coming through Central City, which is just right above Centralia. He was coming above, and a man drove a school bus, left it out on the street, and didn't park it in his driveway as he normally did. And he was coming around early in the morning, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and hit that school bus running wide open over 100 miles an hour. When he did, that ceiling just curled up like a can that you just twist the top off and took all their heads off. Throwed their bodies out all over the street there. They had to send the fire department out there to deal with them, to wash down the blood. And I went on Sunday afternoon over to Mostella's garage, and I saw literally the maggots eating the flesh out of that car. And all 5 of those guys at my study hall table were gone out in eternity. They called off school for 2 days. At Queen Boggs funeral home, they put them out there and they buried them. People in that town has never got over that wreck. Never got over it. And just a few nights before, I was in that same car running 130 miles on the wrong side of the road. Well, what am I doing here? Mercy. What am I doing here? Mercy. I'm here by mercy. I'm here by mercy. I am here by mercy. And we've gotten to the place now to where we just lackadaisically go through life. And we don't care. We're just letting everything slip. We're letting our devotion slip. We're letting our life slip. What do we need? We need Isaiah. We need Psalm 28 where the Lord will lift us up. I'm going to pray and let's see if we can get somebody saved here today or somebody back to God. Or some of you kids need to go to your daddy and say, you know, Daddy, I really have been giving you a rough time. I really am sorry. Because I'm telling you, the Bible says that you can cut your life short. The Bible says if you want to have a long life, Ephesians 6, come read it for yourself. Honor thy father and mother, that thy days may be long upon the earth. Longevity has to go with taking care of mom and daddy. Longevity. My mother is 83 years old. She's never, ever left her mother's side. She's always took care of her mother. Mama didn't get to be 83 just floating through the air. She got to be 83 because she took care of her family. Now listen to me. Well, the old man and his rules. The old man, his rules. The old man, his rules. He's fed you all these years, hasn't he? Changed your diaper. Took care of you in every way possible. Done without so you could have the best. Smiled while his heart was breaking and yours was out there in frolic and revelry. Lord, I think a lot of people just got a little bit mad at me today. But Lord, if some of these people don't make a move toward God, they're going to be in trouble. I know, Lord, I'm living, walking example of what sin can do. I'm a walking, living example of what rebellion, hatred, anger, meanness, unkindness can do. I'm a walking miracle, but I'm also a walking person who knows about what it is to sass your mom and daddy, push your mom and daddy around, cuss the church, cuss the deacons. I'm a walking example of that, Lord. And Lord, there's some people here that's going to bury their children before they see December the 25th. They're going to bury their children. Because they're not getting this picture that you mean to be obeyed, that you mean to be honored, that you mean to be loved, that you mean to be put first. They're not getting this picture. They're just slipping away and letting things slip away. And Lord, the phone's going to ring. No other than that telephone is going to be broken hearts. God, help us today to walk closer to God. Give us a closer walk with Thee. Now, Lord,